Hello there. Hope you're all doing fine today. This, I'm not gonna lie, it's gonna be a weird one. You can probably see the outline of what I'm gonna paint in here, so I'm not gonna describe it. I'm just gonna go ahead and get started, and we'll see how it goes. And yes, this is a commission, believe it or not. Light misting over the canvas, water. I paint with acrylics. This work with acrylic or watercolor, gouache. Would not work with oil unless you're using a specially formulated water mixable oil. You get too much where it's starting to bead up, just kind of go over the canvas with your fingers, work it in. I'm trying not to go over the outlines because this outline sketched in with a watercolor pencil. The thing about a watercolor pencil is it will blend with the water and fade, and I like to use those because since they blend into the water, and acrylic is a water-based paint, those outlines will disappear as you paint. Again, I work with watercolor and gouache. Try to use a very light color, very little detail when I'm sketching it in, so that it doesn't alter the color too much of our painting. It doesn't alter the color of the paint itself. All right. So we're going to start with the sky. Actually, let's go ahead and use a 2-inch brush for that, not a 1-inch. As you can hear there, it's pretty dry. So we'll dip it in a little bit of water. And then we're going to take some blue. I'm going to dull it just a touch with just a little touch of orange on the corner of the brush there. I'm going to grab some white. I need a little more white than that. There we go. Maybe even just a touch more. I just mix it right on the brush. And the reason I missed my canvas is to make that paint spread a little easier. Makes it spread easier. Makes it blend easier. You don't really end up with areas on the canvas where there's the tooth of the canvas showing through. Go over your outline a little bit, don't worry. It's still not spreading all that easy. The water does tend to wick into that canvas pretty quick since it's dry, so you can just get a little bit of water into the paint, not a whole lot. You don't want more than about 25-30% water in your acrylic. It can mess up the binding process. And really, I'm probably only got about 5 to 10% in there. Get a little more. Just maybe go over the edge a little bit, it doesn't matter. You want that to be about as even as you can get it. We can go ahead and get our 1-inch brush for this now. Fill in the little areas where it wasn't able to get before. brush is a lot softer than the original I was using. So it's giving us a different texture. We don't really want that, so I'm going to try a different one here. This one is a little stiffer. Take a dry, clean brush here. And just kind of go over the whole thing to even it out a little bit. Get any texture out of it. That paint laid nice and flat. Got a little brush hair in there I don't want. Got my wires crossed because I forgot to plug in my dang. Well, it's plugged in. I forgot to put on my Langan mic. Okay. That's really about as even as it needs to be because we're going to put some other things in there. I'll go ahead. I'm going to move one of my water cups here. Clean that brush in your bucket. Do the same thing with this guy. And last but not least, that first one we used. Okay. Now let's go ahead and start with some, I want to put some pink clouds in here. I'm going to take a little bit of crimson, mix that in with that blue for a nice lavender color. Might even add a teeny touch of yellow and warm it a touch. And then some white. It's kind of got a nice lavender. Call it pink if you want. I like lavender. Pink to me is a little brighter than that. And we just got some clouds in here. Gotta put in. Smooth out the bottom. I think this needs to be a little lighter still, but we can leave this first little bit of lavender color on there. And then add a brighter one on top, just by mixing a little more white into it. And just add some shadows to it. Pull across to smooth it out. Get a little hair on there again. I got one more little area lavender over on this side. I feel like, about right there, about the same level, maybe a little higher than that first one. Let's go ahead and mix some more white in. Yep. Got some black, don't want that. Nice mix there. And around the top of the clouds, we're just going to brighten it up. And kind of pull across to smooth it out. These are off in the background, so we don't want too much detail on them. Wow, we're pulling that flat. Also don't want texture in that, and other reason to pull it flat. Maybe a little more of a light area down here too, where the light's hitting it. Fill that in. All right. Then we got a few gray clouds we need. I'm just going to take some of that medium gray, mix it in that lavender and a little bit of black. So I don't want them completely dark. I want a little bit of color in them, just so they match the other color in there. These are kind of up here. Need a little water in there. Bring it down a little bit. And we can do the same thing. Some highlights, but I'm going to use a smaller brush. Mix a little more white in. When I'm painting clouds on a painting, I like to start at the horizon and work my way up, because the clouds at the horizon are the furthest away. I like to paint from the furthest objects to the nearest objects. So nearer objects, if you overlap, those nearer objects are going to be the ones that go over the further objects, not the other way around. Soften this one out. And there's little hints of blue and purple in there, but I'm okay with that. I'm gonna go over these one more time with them real gently. And I think I want a little more. That nice light lavender on the bottom of these. Just to liven that one up a little bit. Going in like little circle motions on there to make them look nice, light and fluffy. And again, soften them out. Okay. clean our brushes. And I think I need some mountains in the background of this one. A lot of times if I'm painting mountains, I use a palette knife, but these are far in the background, so I don't think I want them as sharp as they'd look with a palette knife. There might be more mountains than hills anyway, so let's darken that up a little bit more. More mountains and hills anyway, so there might be vegetation on them. Still make sure you're putting in little peaks and valleys. And when you're filling it in with that brush, give it shape with the texture of that paint. This side, shapes of little rocks and crags and the like. So when I'm going to put in a little shadow and highlight, those outlines give us a little idea of where we want it. Probably won't really need shadow, but we'll need highlight. More in here. And then pull it down. Pull it down and blend it out. There'll be some forest stuff in there anyway, so that's what I'm not worried about right here for now. Okay. Get a little more in here. Pull down a little further south. I guess not south, but pull them down a little closer. And take a clean brush. Smooth out the bottom. Even blend the tops out a little. There's a lot of mist in this little scene here. Alright, for some highlights now. Take a touch. A little touch of yellow to warm it. And then some white to lighten it. Not a whole lot lighter. Just a little bit. Come in here. Put those highlights on the peaks. Again, these are in the background. Don't need a heck of a lot of detail. Just kind of enough to tell the viewer's eye where the light source is from and where to look. Okay. I think that'll do for our little foothills, little mountains. Now we want some foothills on those bad boys. I'm gonna take my forest green, permanent green, I mean. I'm going to mix it in, because these are still a little bit in the background. So there's a little atmospheric haze. Giving them that lavender color. I think I want to darken that a little bit, though. That's too much black. A little bit of black won't hurt, though. There we go. That's better. And again, these aren't going to have really anything for detail going on. Maybe we should blue that up a little bit. Make almost a seawater color. And add a little black to darken her up. Just go over them again. Yeah, that looks like there's a little more atmospheric haze. The atmospheric haze could be a little mist. Could just be because they're off in the background. Okay. Now let's go ahead, clean that brush. And at the top here, I'm just gonna pull up a little on the top. Just give a little indication that there's some trees up in there. It's far enough away, it doesn't need to be perfectly even. And you can just get that indication. Now we got another set of hills underneath these. These are definitely going to be a deeper, richer green. I still want a little bit of blue mixed in. I'm also going to mix in a tiny touch of brown, though. Almost makes that green richer. These will be... I need to darken that still. A little more brown. See how that looks. Maybe a little more black. All right, that'll work. This here area, we're going to be putting foliage over. These are close enough that we can start making out the shapes of the trees and the bushes and the like. I'm not going to worry about that corner. That's, well, maybe a little bit. Maybe just a little bit in here. That's a little too rounded. I don't want that rounded to match that back one. There we go. And again, at the very back, just put in the indications of some foliage. And we can clean that brush. Take this guy here. I'm gonna mix in a little light green. Lighten that up a little bit. I think I might mix a little bit of that cad yellow in too. A little more. I'll get it good and bright. A little bit more. Touch of white. It's blending a little bit with that dark green on the canvas because it's not dried. And with this little foliage brush, just punching in the indication of some tree tops, bushes, or grass. not going to go all the way down. And we can do that over here too. Okay. Now we need to start making the indications. Some little ferns and cycads that are closer to us. I'm going to try this brush for the ferns, see how it looks. It'll work. Again, they're not too close. We don't need a whole lot of detail. And just some brighter foliage back in there. Kind of warm it. Maybe we got a nice big one right here that's kind of coming up over this. And then we can mix a little yellow in again. Just going on some of the sides. Add a few little highlights where the sun is beating off the leaves. All right, that's a poor choice of words. Where the sun is bouncing off the leaves. Just want to make it look real thick and forested, almost jungle-like. And go in there. Didn't clean you very well, did I? Go in there with some more of that green, though. Then we got some big, broad leaves. Let's lighten that green up with a little white. And a little cad yellow again. It's big old leafy. Yes. I think we actually might need a little blue in there just to differentiate it. So right now it's not standing out very much. There we go. That little hint of that light sky blue kind of. Definitely helps out. Again, we just want this to look really thick and forested. I'm getting to the point where I'm going to need to take a quick break. Let what I have on here dry. But I want to put in a little more stuff on here before I do that. Just have a few areas where I lifted off paint I didn't want to. Recolor that. Alright, we're going to let that dry, but before we do, I know I'm going to need some conifers in here. I'll come back to it, so I'm just going to take a clean brush. And kind of cut in the shape of the trunks. And a few branches. And I'm doing this so that I don't have the texture of this background on it when we come back to it. And it also gives me a nice little indication of where to put them in. I'm kind of coloring some darkness when we get back. A few more here and there. I think there's one there that's real close. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and take about a 10 or 15 minute break. Actually, before we do that, we better get that colored in. Forgot about that little area. Definitely need to mix up a little more of that green, black, and brown. I'm going to use a smaller brush to fill in over here. Need a little more green on there, though. Again, it's our base coat, so if it's not perfectly smooth, don't sweat it. Now I need a little more of that yellow-green. Don't sweat going over the edges either, like we said. If you brighten that up again. Just some indication of some ferns and leaves. Maybe we'll put a little bit right there too. I don't want that one. I want this guy. And a little bluish green in there as well to get some leaves in. And then if you go over the edges again, put you back in the water. And take a clean brush to pull that color flat. Then the areas we went over the edge. So we don't have a texture we don't want. Don't worry about the color being on there. We can cover up that color. If you want, though, you can always take a little bit of white to go over it. It's not going to completely cover it, but it'll get it a lot closer to your canvas color if you do that. Doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to get a little more in line with our canvas. I think we missed a few little... Oh no, we're good. We're good. I gotta go over that line a little more than I wanted to though, so I'm just gonna put in a few more little details there. It looks nice and lush and tropical. And reshape that edge. Get a little in there too. Put a few more little things over here. They're a little bit lighter. Just create a little more depth. And we'll do the same thing with some darker stuff. Good and dense. All right. I'm gonna go ahead, take about a 10 to 15 minute break here. Let everything on the canvas dry up. Then we'll start putting in some of the trees that are a little closer before we worry about going in and filling in our main characters here. All right, we're back. First thing I want to do is these mountains are a little uneven. So I'm going to touch those up after I clean these brushes. Alright, let's go ahead and get a little more white. Touch of blue. Touch of crimson. And more white. I think I want a little more blue in there. It's a little too lavenderish. And just kind of pull in more highlight on the area where the sun's hitting a little bit different. And a little bit over in here too. Got some texture in there I don't want. I'm just going to work that out with the finger. Okay, we're good there. Now we can make some of our branches. After we clean that brush, of course. I want this little chisel edge. It's about a 1/4 of an inch. We want some dark brown. Almost black with just a little hint of brown. Even take a little of that deep green in there. And just in those areas we flattened out. Painted those branches. Not dark to stand out because they're kind of hidden behind the leaves that are going to be on them. So they're not getting a whole lot of light. We'll need a few up here too. Got a big old tree here. And mix it in a little water to make it spread a little easier. Paint in there ain't gonna hurt nothing. And I feel like some of those trunks need to be a little thicker towards the side. So we can go ahead and get a bigger brush. Thicken them out some. So pull the chisel out to get get the basic shape in there as well. Pulling a few more down here too. Thicken some of those lines up, get them a little darker, stand out more. Let's go ahead and take our liner brush. Put a little few stummy down here. Things that might be growing. Okay. Take our stiff bristly brush. And we're going to mix up some of that dark green and brown and a little black. Start punching in the leaves on these. More of that dark color. I'm just kind of doing a branch at a time here. Darken them up a little bit and lighten them up a little bit. But you want them to be dark. You don't want to go too light. Punch in the light ones later, where the light's hitting them. If you feel like you got too many gaps, you can fill that in too. You don't want to get rid of all of that space between, but it's okay to get rid of some of it. Make it really thick and dark up there at the top. Some at the bottom now too. Mix more of that color as you go, right on the brush. Right down to the bottom. Kind of little area we messed up, right? One little branch right here we missed. Let's go ahead and fill in some of this gap with some leaves, some needles. And then I want to put in some brighter greens down here. So I don't want them too bright at first, because again, we got to put highlight on them. So we're just going to mix a little bit of light green in. Take our corner. Let's get a smaller brush. brighter for what we need. It's a little, might be a little too light. Oh yeah, let's mix a little more black in. Okay. Take this brush again, mix some of that light green, some cad yellow. Get a little more of that cad yellow, I think. And we can go ahead and start putting in some of the areas where the light's hitting those needles. And start towards the top, work your way down, because it'll blend with that dark green paint since it's still wet. Get a little bit darker in the areas where it's not getting as much light. Let that paint do the work for you. It's just a nice little technique to get some variation in there. Nature is so very rarely uniform. There's always little bits of variation in what you see. What brush do I want? I'm going to take that little 1/4 inch one again. And some of that cad yellow. In with that medium green. That brush might be too soft. Let's try this one. I'll add some white to it. There we go. I'm starting pulling wide, and then I'm moving the brush as I pull along. Start wide, and then turning it to where it sharpens. Punch a few of those in those back in the background there. And those leaves are thicker at the top than at the bottom. So by doing this, we're getting a thick highlight. Turns into a thin one. We can even take some of that other tree highlight we got there. Mix in a touch more of the light green. Just add a little more variation in there. Take our bristle brush. Need more black. Let's punch in a few more of our bristles over that plant. That plant's kind of in the background. Get our dark. And we can get our light. Get that on top of there. If you want to cut in a few little tweaks here and there, just take a palette knife and don't push hard enough to cut through the canvas, but push hard enough to scrape some of that paint off. Some little highlights in there. Some sticks without some stuff. Ooh, let's go ahead. Put a few over there as well. Alright. Okay, that is pretty much it for the background. So let's start first. There's a dinosaur's tail right here. And yes, if you can't tell, this gentleman is riding a dinosaur. Nice thing about it, nobody really knows what color these dinosaurs were. So we can kind of make up our own palette for it. I'm going to go with some iridescence. Let's make some blue highlights. First thing we're going to do though, I'm going to get some more black. And this is a thin black, so I forgot to get another tube of my thick black. It happens. Get our bristly brush here. I'm going to put a black base down for the feathers. I'm just using this bristly one at the top. Give it a little texture. I don't want it really thick. You want some of that, a little bit, not a whole lot, but a little bit of that white showing through in spots. Make it look like there's a little light hitting these feathers. Pull up on the top a little bit. Give it a little hint of feathery shape. Now I got a fan brush. Go through this fan brush, get some of that black and blue mix, mainly towards the top, but we'll do a little on the bottom too. Mix some of that light blue, dark blue I mean. These are like filamentary feathers on his tail. They don't branch out like pinion feathers for wings. These are just for insulation. Mix a little bit of that in. Then I'm just going to get pretty much some straight blue kind of towards the top here. Yeah, and this is kind of where the light's really hitting those feathers. Give it a nice iridescent. Like if you've ever seen like light hitting a crow's wing or a blackbird's wing on a bright day. The dark parts on a pigeon even. You get a little iridescent. Blend that out a little bit. I'm gonna get a little more of that dark blue and put in a few more little effects. Nice thing is when that paint is wet, you can blend it right out. I'm going to take this that first bristly brush we used. Get some of that blue on there. Just because it's a smaller surface, this one gives us a little more control.
Let's put our microphone back on.
Put our microphone back on, Scott. And maybe we'll mix a little titanium white in there too. Get a nice bright blue. just for right at the top and a few little areas down here. We'll have to stay darker at the bottom though. Okay, we got that area. Now we can do the same thing over here. Start with the black. Let's go ahead and try to use that fan brush for that. See how that works. Clean it off first, of course. That's one thing about these fan brushes is it's a little hard sometimes to get them to hold their shape all that well. Alright. Go back to some of that darker blue. Get a few dark blue highlights in there. And then we'll go in to that straight blue. I'm going to put a little more right in here too. There we go. And then we can go into that lightest blue. Just for right at the top. You feel you got it a little too bright on the bottom? Well, just take a little black. Let me go over some of that color. I'll just scratch in a few more little highlights in there. Okay. Leave that sit now. Now we can start painting in the saddle. It's gonna mix some burnt umber and a little orange to get it a little lighter. And that's just sort of our base for that saddle. Have to come back and do another layer, obviously. It's not very thick. But we can get that color in for it. The same thing over here. Got our saddle horn. Make it a little wider there. Again, this is just sort of our base coat. Get the base of that color in. It's obviously going to take more than one layer. That's all right. Give me a chance to put in some highlights. I need to shape that a little more, though. Part of the reason that looks darker over there is because we're painting over green. And when you mix brown and green, you get a nice, almost black color. Okay. I need my little foliage feller again. Forgot to color in over here between the saddle horn and his fingers. Get that in now. Okay, now we can go back into our brown and orange. Tighten up the edge. A little more of that. Let's move this one out a little more as well. Kind of using this to give that saddle leather nice rough texture. So when we go back to do our later layers, we can give it some nice texture fix. Okay, well, I think that's going to do it for now. I want to let this dry and we can come back and finish her off tomorrow after work. My work, not yours. You can watch this in whatever order you want. But if you've been watching to relax, I hope I did the trick. If you're watching to learn something, I hope you did learn something. And I'll see you folks real soon when we come back to finish this piece. You have a great day and an even better night. Goodbye.